let's look at what documents I do have for the Hugos. They have not released the long list yet. I assume they will eventually, but I have some stuff to look at that's kind of interesting. But I have waited as long as I can to film this with my work week, and I am still sad that I don't have a long list, because even if I didn't film YouTube videos, I am a nerd who would like the long list. I'm not even saying that I think any shenanigans are happening. I just would simply like to know what was on the long list for some of these categories. But it is what it is. I have some documents. Basically, though, I just want to remind people, if they don't know how the Hugos work, it's a pay-to-vote popularity contest. There's like I think for actual final voting, we had 1,962 final ballots. For nominating, there were like 1,300-ish ballots. So it is less than 2,000 people that determine what's on the short list and then who vote for it. And it's chosen by basically who thinks they have the disposable income to do this. I will remind you that if you spend the $50 to have a supporting membership, which is all you need to do, you get a reading packet. So remember, $50 today, unfortunately, doesn't even buy you 2 hardcover books. But $50 will get you probably at least 6 books for the novel, a bunch of novellas. This year they did a bunch of audiobooks in addition. I think Sanderson literally gave all 5 Stormlight Archive audiobooks and ebooks. So it depends on the year, but it's generally value, okay? So if you are at all interested, I think there's an argument to be made that becoming a member might not be a waste of time or money. But that is to say, if you think it's prestigious, it's mostly just long running. That's what we mean by prestigious. The group of people, there's no qualification. You don't have like an actual like, I am a certified science fiction fantasy geek. I have read X number of books, so I am qualified to nominate and vote. That's not what happens. Okay, it's much more informal and chill than that. So let's get into it. In general, I just upfront, I'm not like upset about anything that's happened. In general, I'm still find it a very mid-year, but in the midness, I think there were some shining moments that I'll highlight. And I am kind of interested in the stats that they gave us. Again, but what I want is the long list. I don't know why we don't have the long list. There are like, not having the long list and some of the things that happened in the ceremony just kind of shows me a little bit that like, I kind of wish my supporting dollars went a bit more to the Hugo's part, because I know my supporting dollars go to the whole World Con, but it's just like, there are things that could be done to avoid pitfalls and have things done a little more expediently, because there were definitely issues with pronunciation of names at the ceremony, that we forgot a name at one point, so I think whatever the script was doing was really funky. And, you know, but like some great things were there, like they finally had an accessibility ramp for the stage, which I know sounds like the bare minimum, but like was a huge deal from what I could see on Blue Sky. And in general, I'm kind of, best case scenario, I feel, with voting, in my opinion. So let's get into it. So I'm just going to kind of go through the packet, because it's kind of in an order that makes sense. And so one of the first graphs that interested me that they had was percentage of voted per category. And so obviously, the most voted category is novel with like over 80%. And then things that had like 70-ish% were best novella, short story, not novelette, and dramatic presentation long form. And I think all of those make sense. Novellas, novels, movies, those are all things that people consume pretty casually. And short story, like Hugo readers really like short stories. I mean, even I read all of them. And once you have the packet, it's just like really easy to read them. Like they're just all given to you, or you're given links to where you can read them for free. Novelette and series had 60%. I always get confused by series. Like, especially like, I feel like even if you've only read one of the series, you would vote for it if you thought it was worth it. And then after that, things get to like 50% and below. Like best related work was at 50%. Semiprozine was at like, I want to say 40%. And then everything else is a bit around the 30 to 25% mark. Okay? They had a cool graph that's like, if you were first in first round voting. So it's ranked voting. So when you vote for this, you basically vote, this is my number one pick. And they will only count your highest ranked pick until your highest ranked pick is out of the running, and then they move your vote to your next ranked pick if it's still in the running, okay? So you're essentially, you're not basically getting your vote put in each pocket and it's like, this is weighted at 1/6 of it or anything. It's more just like, my number rank is this, and it's going to stay this way until it doesn't have enough votes to continue, and then they take my next lowest, etc. And so a lot of the times, the one that's leading in the first round before they move the ranks around can be the winner, but that's just not always the case. Like, percentage with winner as the first voter. So only like 28% of people who rank chose voted number one for the book that won best novel. But the highest category were like, I think, looks like it's like 36%. I don't know. These graphs are not like, they're very cool, but like if I was making even like a presentation for school in undergrad, this would not pass muster, because like we're not given all the numbers at the top of the y-axis, but like whatever. At least we have them. Like they don't really have to give these graphs either. Like, I'm sure whoever put this document together was underappreciated. So, like, they actually do some really pretty graphics later on. And so, Astounding, though, most people put their rank chose one for the person who won and things like that. So I just thought that was an interesting graph. The one that had the most movement was Best Traumatic Short Form and Best Series and Best Game or Interactive Work. So those are the ones that were like sub 20%. So basically, rank voting really helps choose that one because there's a lot of movement. It also makes sense because you just have less votes happening here. Because we only have 1,900 votes, and not everyone cares about every category. Like I said earlier, we have some categories where only 30%, so a third of 1,900, which is like 600 people are participating. All right, so we'll just start with Best Novel. That's the first thing that they show us. So they have, like I said, this really pretty graph that I'll show you guys, where they basically show how votes redistribute in each round of counting until they get to the winner. Now, from the get-go, the Tainted Cup had the most. Okay, so the Tainted Cup is the winner, and it had the most votes just from the get-go, even before distribution happens. I'm not really surprised about this. I mean, in some ways, it's interesting because he definitely had a social media misstep, basically putting his foot in it with AI stuff. If you want to know more, you can find it on the internet. It's just someone being very loud about AI in a way where, in my opinion, I feel like they don't actually understand what they're saying or what AI is doing, which is a dime a dozen with the people I interact with in my real life. So, I mean, it's annoying and frustrating, and I'd like people to be smarter, but, like, what are you going to do? But people are not chronically online, and in general, it's a pretty accessible, serviceable, entertaining detective mystery in a very interesting world. And so I'm not surprised that it performed really well. Like, in that first round, if you look at this, the next three are pretty neck and neck, which is A Sorceress Comes to Call, Alien Clay, and Someone You Can Build a Nest In. But the Tainted Cup basically doubles all of their votes in the first round. Something I also thought was interesting, because remember we had two Adrian Tchaikovskys, is he did pretty much split his own vote in the first round. So if you take the 197 votes from Service Model and the 263 votes from Alien Clay, and like, to be fair, they're very different books, and even in his fans, not everyone likes both of them, so maybe, you know, if you get rid of one, all those votes don't go to the other, and you kind of actually see that with the distribution. But still, if you add that together, then it's very competitive with the Tainted Cup number. So, but the lowest ranked in the first round is Service Model. That's the one I DNF'd. Then it's Ministry of Time, which is the one I thought was a 3-star read. And then Someone You Can Build a Nest In, Alien Clay, and then Sorceress Comes to Call. And in general, it's almost my ranking, except I have A Sorceress Comes to Call as higher. And so yeah, if you look here, the distribution after the first round Service Model pretty much equally gives it to all books. And it kind of does that each time. The only time where we have a huge preference is when Someone You Can Build a Nest In drops out. Those voters' next rank that was still available to them, most of them went to A Sorceress Comes to Call. But otherwise, things just kind of kept getting distributed fairly easily. Doesn't surprise me. It was a very average year of books. Like, I could see an argument for people going anyway. So yeah, Tainted Cup, and then a runner-up's A Sorceress Comes to Call. Yeah. I thought it was weird, and like, obviously everyone has their reasons for not going to Worldcon, but I thought it was weird that Robert Jackson Bennett didn't go. But I don't know where he lives. I don't know what his life's like. He did make a video, but it's just like, I don't know. I feel like if I was an author in science fiction fantasy, even though I know awards are dumb, if I had the chance of winning a Hugo, I would try to be there. But I don't know. That's just how I would do it, but I'm also not an author. And again, I don't know what his life was like. I mean, for all I know, he really couldn't be there. Like, jobs happen. Not everyone's job is a full-time author, so. Novella, I was pretty okay with Novella. Like, my favorite didn't win, but I liked the Tusks of Extinction, which was the winner for this category. It was basically the first round is where we had our number one and number two that stayed our number one and number two the entire time, which was the Tusks of Extinction and What Feasts at Night. And then, like, the other one that was kind of close was my favorite, so the Practice, Horizon, and the Chain. But it got knocked out pretty early, even though it initially did have more votes than The Butcher and the Forest, which held on a bit longer. And again, you kind of look at this, what surprised me a tiny bit, and maybe it's just kind of fatigue, but the Niveau was like the first to go. And I feel like people really like this novella. I haven't read it, so I don't know. Maybe there's just a lot of people like me who are fatigued on it. But when that was knocked out, I guess there was preferential for the Aliat de Bodar and the Primi Mohammed. And then after that, it's a relatively equal split of navigational entanglements voters, but there's a slight What Feasts at Night preference. But in general, things are just kind of evenly split, except for when The Butcher and the Forest was knocked out. So it was in third place. Most of its votes went to What Feasts at Night, but not enough to counteract the Tusks of Extinction. I like the Tusks of Extinction. I'm really not annoyed that it won. Like, I'm really not. Like, it's not my favorite by a long shot. I actually do think the Practice, the Horizon, and the Chain maybe should have held on a bit longer, but I get that it would also not be everyone's cup of tea. It's very stylized. Novelette. This is incredibly unsurprising, mainly because most people don't read novelettes very often. And then when you do have the packet and you get access to maybe one of the Hugo darlings who's usually behind a paywall, then you can probably do pretty well here. But our top two were The Four Sisters Overlooking the Sea, which is Naomi Kritzer, who I love and most Hugo voters love. If you don't know who she is, the only novel that you might know of is Catfishing on Catnip, but they're pretty much more of a short form author these days. Lake of Souls was my pick, and that was Anne Leckie. And then the rest are really just like in the mid 150s area. So they're all essentially equal, except for Loneliness Universe kind of being the bottom, but like we're talking 120 versus 147. And I don't think there's really a big preferential split at any point. Like whenever one drops, it's kind of 50-50 where they all go. It's very evenly distributed. So I think just Naomi Kritzer ekes it out. It's 555 versus 484. So it's still like kind of close, and it's kind of interesting because Anne Leckie's also a darling. And I just wonder if like it was just more annoying to read Lake of Souls. Or, Four Sisters Overlooking the Sea. I did enjoy that. I found it very engaging. I just didn't find it very like speculative. Moving on to short story. This was really surprising to me. I think I'm not annoyed at this category. It was just the most surprising to me, having read all the short stories. So the last place makes sense to me. Three Faces of Beheading. That was just a weird story. I like Arcady Martine. Most Hugo voters like Arcady Martine. That was weird. That was hard to grasp. Okay. And so that was the first one knocked out of the running. Most of its votes went to Stitch to Skin Like Family Is. And We Will Teach You How to Read. We Will Teach You How to Read. Okay? And then next up is Five Views of Planet Tartarus. It's a flash fiction. Honestly, I think unless you're really having a discussion about it, it's not going to stick with you long. And even though we had a discussion about it, I didn't rank it very highly. So then that one goes, and most of its votes went to Stitch to Skin Like Family Is. Although it does spread its love around fairly equally, but that's where most of the weight is based off. Like I said, these graphs, I really like them. They're very visually enticing where you can see how votes get redistributed. And then we have Marginalia, which was my least favorite. I think that was the most like fine story to also bad. Like I don't like the themes and I don't like the story. I don't know why it exists. I don't know why it's so popular other than it's in Uncanny Magazine, which people love. And it's an author Hugo voters love that I traditionally don't love. So I'm just extra salty about it, but it gets knocked out in this round here. And most of its votes go to Niveau. And I think this is the big turning point here, is that's where we get Niveau really coming ahead of the other ones, is that we have people who vote for things with their Hugo Darling author, and then their Hugo Darling author gets knocked out of the running, and it goes to their next Hugo Darling author. So it went from, basically Arcady Martine to Niveau, and then it went from Marginalia to Nevo, which there's no issue with it. I actually like the Nevo story. It's just like that's the trend I kind of see. And then we have in our third place, We Will Teach You How to Read. We Will Teach You How to Read, which is very experimental, but very interesting. And so most of its votes after that went to the Nevo. So we have basically a pretty close, well, it's not super close, honestly. It's 678 versus 532. And so why don't we just kill the kid in the ominous hole? Got second place, which it won the Nebula. So I'm not really surprised. I just think, I don't know. I liked Stitch to Skin Like Family Is. I just didn't love it. And I just thought there were more interesting things in the pile to vote for. But that said, like, I did like it. So I'm not upset about it. It was just, like, interesting watching the path and seeing the ranking. Because I think really the only thing that really disagrees with my ranking is the winner. And I would have put a Marginalia at the bottom. Moving on to Best Series. So this is where, like, I start to be, like, very excited. Because this is obviously announced later on in the night. So I guess just to discuss it up front, we have 3 Indigenous authors who won Hugos. And I thought that was really cool. I thought that was really awesome. I don't even know if, I think I only contributed to that in a little bit. I didn't contribute to that in Best Series that much, probably. But the Best Series is Between Earth and Sky by Rebecca Roanhorse, which I have, DNF'd. I'm not going to finish that series. But it's still, like, nice to see. Second place is Encrypted by Shauna Maguire, who is a Hugo darling, and people who like Encrypted, I mean, they've gotten all the books. I do want to keep reading it. I did start it, and I do think it's like if I want to read Buffy. Like, I've read, like, the first couple chapters, and it even has the, like, we're doing our job at a club looking for, like, a thing to kill, which is so Buffy at the teen club waiting to fight vampires. Like, so, I mean, I kind of am excited for it. Third place was Southern Reach, and honestly, that was pretty neck and neck with Encrypted, like, when it was coming down to that rank voting section. And so, unfortunately, last place is Burning Kingdom, which we all know is my first. I really wanted Burning Kingdom to win, but no one reads it. So, such is life. So most of its votes, though, went to Between Earth and Sky, which was not me. My second one was Stormlight Archive. So I just added to the Stormlight Archive pool. And then the Tyrant Philosophers, which is the Adrian Tchaikovsky series, that was the next one to drop, and most of its votes were split between Southern Reach and Between Earth and Sky. And then the next one to drop is Stormlight, because Sanderson's not really popular by Hugo readers. Makes sense. Also, gosh, not everybody is going to read even one Stormlight Archive book for a Best Series thing. Like, that's just a huge commitment, even if you're given all the audiobooks in the packet. All right, and so then those votes are split pretty evenly. And then our third place, Southern Reach, most of it goes to Between Earth and Sky. And so I think what's interesting is Encrypted just, like, when people love it, they love it. Like, they ranked it first, and they put their foot there, because it gets some votes from other categories, but it doesn't quite get as many votes as Between Earth and Sky. And I think originally, let me look at the original first round. Between Earth and Sky has 193 votes, and Encrypted has 268. So if you don't do rank voting, Encrypted wins, which is why we do ranked voting, because it's a little more representative of, like, how people preferentially rank things. But I always like series. I think the series one is always very interesting. Burning Kingdoms deserved better, but Now, moving down to Best Graphic Story or Comic, I don't know anything about these. The first place was the Star Trek Lower Decks, because Hugo voters love Star Trek Lower Decks, which I think, based off what I've seen, is very good media, and I should look into it. But generally, every year a Star Trek Lower Decks thing happens, I know about it. Because of the Hugos, specifically, either through nominations or winning or stuff like that. Probably primarily nominations. I don't really know the rest of them. The second place was the Deep Dark. So yeah. Moving down below, Best Related Work. Now, this is one I need to look up, because I knew 4 of the 6, and the one that won was the one I didn't know. And it's, I think, the one you would actually have to, like, purchase at a bookstore. So the first round, the one that was winning is the Spectacular Failure of the Star Wars Hotel, okay, which is a 4-hour-long YouTube video. And after that, we then have a bunch of votes going to, let's see, like, so the first round, that's what happens. And then the thing that drops is Track Changes, which that was one of the ones I didn't know. And after that is when we get a bunch of votes ending up in speculative whiteness, science fiction, and the alt-right, which is the one that wins. And again, the one I feel like I need to read, and I'm sure it's possible a timeliness thing, which I think is totally fair for a best related work category. The r/fantasy bingo was my rank 1 just because, like, that's what I like. But it loses at that point, but then its votes go primarily to the winner, speculative whiteness, science fiction, and the alt-right. And then we've got the charting the cliff. I really like that statistics one, but that one drops out next. And most of it then goes to the Hugo Awards report, which makes sense. Those two are kind of linked. So if maybe you ranked one at, 1, then the next one's 2, and it's still in the running. But then this is where the Star Wars Hotel doesn't make it. At this point, it's between the speculative whiteness, science fiction, and the alt-right, and the Hugo Awards censorship report. And after that, it's basically a 50-50 split between the hotel. And so speculative whiteness, science fiction, and the alt-right won. And I really should look into it. So that was pretty cool. It was really close. It was 376 to 356. Like, this is one of those categories that, like, only 30% of people vote in. So, like, your vote, like, matters in this category. All right, best presentation long form movies, primarily, like long form things. This is one where in general, there wasn't a lot of movement. Like, as you do the rank voting, the order of things kind of stays the same. And shocking, nobody. Dune Part 2 won. I'm shocked. No, not at all. But it was only by like 100 some votes. So it won, it's 637, and then Flow, an interesting animated thing that was also for the Oscars, I think, had 517. My highest vote was The Wild Robot. It got 3rd place. So that was cool. Last place was Furiosa, then Wicked, and then I Saw the TV Glow, which I think tracks. I think that makes sense to me. And then Best Presentation Short Form. Wow, this was a close one too. Dang. I don't think I knew this one was that close. So initially, first round, Agatha All Along. There was an episode from that was winning. I won't talk about the episode too much because I don't want to spoil it, but it involves Patti LuPone's character, and it's amazing. And actually at the Hugos, they had a little riff of using the song from that show, but making a parody of it. It was very cute. And so initially, the first 2 places are Agatha All Along and Fallout: The Beginning, which actually Ryan and I are watching Fallout right now. It's a pretty great show. I don't even know if I've gotten to that episode yet because we have 2 more left. And I feel like that's probably maybe the finale because I feel like the first episode was called The Ending. I don't remember. I don't read episode titles, regardless. So those were actually the first 2 places, okay? In our first round, we dropped Doctor Who, Dot and Bubble, which, that's not even my favorite of the Doctor Who, so that's fine. And then most of those Doctor Who votes go to Doctor Who 73 Yards, okay? So that's why Doctor Who's second, like in the first round, both Doctor Who's are in like 5th and 6th place. Well, kind of. Yes, they are both in 5th and 6th place. But then it holds on because it got all of the other Doctor Who votes. So Doctor Who didn't split its vote. That's why rank voting's kind of nice. It's like, even if there's a disagreement in the fandom, this is probably as many Doctor Who votes as it was going to get. But then the next thing to go is one of the Star Trek Lower Decks episode. And it does the same thing as like Doctor Who, where most of the Star Trek votes go to the Star Trek people, okay? So now we probably have a more realistic look at where we're at, which is where we have a Star Trek Lower Decks episode with 294. We have Agatha All Along at 281. Then we have Fallout: The Beginning at 264, and then Doctor Who at 212. So really incredibly close, all things considered. But Doctor Who gets knocked out and basically splits things relatively equally, but Star Trek gets the lion's share. Which makes sense, because if you like space travel shows, you're gonna like Star Trek and Doctor Who, probably, most of the time. There is an overlap in audiences there. One is the hokey Americanized version, and one is the British version. Those are the 60s darlings, right, that we've just been revamping through the years. But then Fallout Beginning falls, and it basically splits it relatively equally between the 2, with, Star Trek hedging it out, 451 to 442. I did not anticipate Hugo voters loving Agatha All Along that much. I really didn't. I really didn't. Marvel doesn't usually do that well, comparatively, it does okay. So that was interesting. Best Game in Interactive Work also surprised me, only in that in the first round, Dragon Age was the winner. And it was the winner until we drop Tactical Breach Wizards and Lorelei and Laser Eyes, and then we suddenly get a shift to Caves of Cud, which I have never played and never heard of because I'm not a gamer. And then we lose The Legend of Zelda, and suddenly Dragon Age hops up again. And then we lose 1,000 times X-Resist. And that is where we get to Caves of Cud winning at 246 and Dragon Age the Veilguard losing at 193. But only like 330 some people voted for this. So I guess Hugo voters really do not care or do not play many video games or interactive works. In theory, a board game could be nominated. That's never going to happen. Editor was pretty good. I mean, for short form, it was Neil Clark. It was pretty close, 288 to 221. I don't have many opinions about it. I think all the editors, I'm just glad we recognize them. I wish they made it easier for voters to know how to nominate and who to consider, because there was an editor mentioned by Rebecca Roanhorse, her editor, and she was mentioning all the works he's worked on. I'm like, yeah, I would nominate that man. I just never knew who they were. I think it's a man. I could be wrong. I don't remember the name, but it's someone who does Stephen Graham Jones and Rebecca Roanhorse. They're one of the Saga Press, fantasy people that I really like. So anyways, but long form went to Diana Empha, and it was close with Lee Harris. I think Lee Harris is Tor, and I think Diana Empha is Evan. Oh, it starts with an E, a publishing place. But again, I just kind of like that we still have it, even though it's incredibly hard to vote for. And I mean, it's easier to vote for, because when you vote for it, they at least show you the books they've done. But nominating's really hard. I actually don't know why more people don't vote for it, other than maybe they just don't understand how important editors are. But I think it's a lot like how you don't understand how important a producer is for an album. It's they're the collaborator with this artist to help make this piece of art into its final form. And it's an important thing to have a developmental editor, so. But when you're voting for it in the packet, they literally just show you all the works they worked on, and even if you don't put that much thought into it, you can just go oh, well, this has the majority of the works I really like, so I'll just vote for this editor. I don't actually know why it's that much work. Nominating, boatload of work. It's super hard. We even have a spreadsheet as a community, but even with the spreadsheet, it's just, I remember one year I really put a lot of work into putting names in there because no one had done anything, but it took me forever because there's no part of the book, except maybe the acknowledgements, that tells you who is the editor for this book. It's really not easy to find if you're not in publishing. And maybe it's hard to find even when you're in publishing. I don't know, but I'm not in publishing, so it's really hard to find. Professional artist was Alyssa, and she did a bunch of the art for the Nevo books. Actually, recently I read Red Scholar's Wake. They did the cover for that. So that was one of the authors I put highly. I mean, I loved all the art. There wasn't really bad art, so. And I don't think there was a lot of moving around. Actually, the first and second place, there was some moving around. So Ravina Kai, which I think might have been my vote. There was some moving around between them two, but they were always really close. First round was 158 to 152. So, really close. And then we've got Semiprozine. Uncanny wins again. It's not even close. They were first the entire time. By 100 votes behind, Faya gets up there. I really love Faya as a magazine, and I don't know. I wish more people knew about them. I did vote in the Ignites. I did do that. I'm excited to see what the results are. But yeah, Strange Horizon made it to the 4th round, and then most of its votes went to Uncanny, because I feel like Strange Horizons is also pretty popular. So. Yeah. And then when Escape Pod got knocked out, it basically just went 50-50 Uncanny and Faya. Fanzine, the best one was Black Nerd Problems. And then Fancast, I know nothing about. It was neck and neck between 8 Days of Diana One Jones and World Building for Masochist. There was a 1 vote difference. So that's pretty cool. I just don't listen to podcasts. And, yes, Fancast can be for YouTube stuff, but it never is. So, best fan writer, it was neck and neck between Abigail and Camestros, but I don't know. This is the one that I really didn't look into that much because I didn't have the time to read any of the things. I did look into fan artist, and Sarah Felix won, and they were the one who did a lot of the art around Glasgow, and apparently it meant a lot. Their speech, you could tell she'd been through a year, so I'm happy she got it. And then second place was Ian Clark. So yeah, I think my favorite was Meg Frank. I think that's the one who did the cool cross-stitch bookmarks, but I can't remember. But in general, all their art was very fun. It was just, preferences. I didn't read the poems, but apparently poems going to be a category from now on, so maybe I'll read poems in the future. There was a little bit of movement between first and second place, so A War of Words versus Calypso kept having a back and forth there, but I don't have really any opinions. All right, and then we got the Lodestar Award for Best Young Adult, which is technically not a Hugo, but the Hugo people vote for it. And I guess there was some pretty back and forth between Heavenly Tyrant and Darcy Little Badger's book, which is the one I voted for. I'm pretty sure that was the only one I voted for. It was the only one I cared about. So we had some pretty big movement back and forth there. It wasn't until The Maid and the Crocodile dropped out that the majority dropped out, when it got disqualified and, had the lowest votes. Most of the 149 votes for The Maid and the Crocodile went to Darcy Little Badgers. And I was just very happy that they won. I truly was. And then we have our Astounding Award. And this one, it was Monique Black Goose the entire time. There was really no competition. Actually, how did they... So I guess they didn't even... So I think they stopped at the second round. And I'd have to look at the Constitution. But I think if someone gets more than a certain percentage of all the votes, you can stop the rank voting. You can stop the rank voting if someone gets more than 50% of the votes, I think. And so there are only 456 votes for this. And then by that round, Monique Black Goose got 323. I think that's how it works. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. But even if you look there, she had 323 and the other two had 126 and 140. So yeah, not bad. I just want my long list. Goodness. So yeah, we'll see if we ever get a long list, and if I think it's worth talking about, I'll make a video on it. But otherwise, I'm eager for the results for the Ursula K. Le Guin Award in Fiction and the Ignites. That's what I'm eager for. That's what's going to get me through the end of 2025 for my award season. And then, of course, let's not be silly. I'm going to shit on the Goodreads Choice Awards, like I always do. I mean, maybe I won't. Maybe it'll impress me. It's been unimpressing each year. I think it peaked at 2020 for me. That was a really reasonable year. Anyways, let me know what you think of anything. And if you want to leave an emoji to let me know you're here, leave a rocket ship emoji. And otherwise, if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.